That you as a taxpayer, it's driving you crazy that I'm being allowed to receive law books and things of that sort.
A flood of frivolous lawsuits filed by convicted criminals outrages crime victims and taxpayers. Legal observers say inmates have become legal terrorists.
A News 8 exclusive report tops tonight's update. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. News 8 has spent months investigating what judges are calling legal harassment, inmates filing outlandish cases to intimidate prison employees. Those lawsuits accounted for 1/4 of all the federal civil suits filed across the nation last year, and it's costing taxpayers plenty. Tonight, in the first part of his series, Convicts Court, Channel 8's Robert Riggs begins an exclusive look at what's happening behind prison walls.
You're witnessing the final minutes of guards putting down a 7-hour prison uprising over a cold lunch. This incident is likely to become one of thousands of frivolous lawsuits filed by Texas inmates. The worst prison troublemakers, the most violent of the violent, abuse the legal system to seek revenge against the prison system. Many of those lawsuits begin on cell blocks like this one at the McConnell unit in South Texas. It's a prison inside a maximum security prison called administrative segregation, reserved for inmates who behave like wild animals.
These inmates down here are all staff assaulted. Every one of them in 1994 have assaulted officers either by throwing urines, spit in their face, throwing feces on them.
This inmate is waiting for a full medical exam required to make sure he wasn't injured when guards removed him from his cell. A guard's camera clearly shows the inmate assaulting an officer. Even though guards are often the targets of abuse, it's the inmates who file hundreds of lawsuits claiming excessive force. Inmates must get at least 10 hours a week access to prison law libraries under U.S. Supreme Court and lower court rulings. Texas inmates using law books most attorneys can't afford filed nearly 4,200 lawsuits last year, 1/3 of all federal civil suits filed in the state. Most seek money for civil rights violations. Few ever go to trial. Most are dismissed as frivolous. It costs Texas federal courts an estimated $10 million a year. Meet 27-year-old Troy Wigley, who has already cost taxpayers thousands of dollars. Wigley is serving a life sentence for aggravated robbery. He has filed 16 lawsuits since entering prison 8 years ago. Wigley has spent all of those years in administrative segregation for assaulting guards. Wigley sued for $24 million in one case, claiming he suffered nightmares and injuries from a beating by guards. The federal courts dismissed that suit as frivolous. In another case, Wigley sued for nearly $2 million because he couldn't change TV channels, had to eat with plastic utensils. His Thanksgiving dinner was cold, and he wanted weightlifting equipment and a pool table. The federal court also dismissed that suit as frivolous, but it cost taxpayers nearly $1,700 for the Attorney General and prison system to win a dismissal to just one of the many evidentiary hearings on Wigley's lawsuits.
The many times that I've walked in a courtroom in an evidentiary hearing, I generally hear the saying from the Assistant Attorney General, here he comes, Perry Mason.
Perry Mason always wins. Do you always win?
No, I haven't won yet, but I've gained lots of knowledge. I've gained a lot of experience and a lot of respect from the courts.
Wigley has plenty of time on his hands to work on lawsuits. Unpredictably, violent inmates like him are only allowed out of their cells 2 hours a day. It's so dangerous that guards and inmates walk down the cell block behind a clear protective shield. Under Supreme Court rulings, these inmates get up to 5 law books a day delivered to their cell door. Most inmates claim they are paupers and can file suit absolutely free of charge. A Travis County jury convicted Wigley for the brutal attack on an Austin woman in which he hammered a knife into her skull. She suffered 600 stitches and a rape, but the most she could hope to recover from the Crime Victims Compensation Fund is $25,000. On the other hand, Wigley is using the legal system to try to get at least $100,000 for each of his civil rights suits. Wigley says he studied law books 16 hours a day for 2 years, teaching himself how to file civil rights suits and write writs challenging his conviction. A federal judge has levied 2 $100 fines against Wigley for filing frivolous suits. For Wigley, the pain and suffering of his victim is also a matter of dollars and cents.
They too are awarded some money just for being a victim.
You think that would take care of everything, the pain and the suffering?
I think it would even out the score, and I think it would place some burden on the state. And I think that
And now, how about your victim? Would it even the score on your victim?
well, I think it would have compensated the victim in my case.
From what I found in the law books.
Hearings give inmates an opportunity to argue their cases before a judge. Inmate lawsuits clogged 60% of the civil docket in Tyler's U.S. District Courts. Federal courts there and the state spent $100,000 to set up two-way video hearings. But even at that, it's cheaper than bringing the inmate and witnesses to the Tyler courthouse. The inmate stays behind bars, the judge stays in her courtroom an hour's drive away. This convicted child molester sued the prison warden because he had to work on the whole squad. The inmate claims he was medically unfit for the worst job in the prison system, and that it's retaliation for filing other lawsuits. The inmate has already been fined and barred from filing in the Southern District because of frivolous suits. This half-hour-long hearing required the presence of 5 prison officials and guards.
And your question was, how do you prove it?
Right.
Well, you're in federal court. You've got to prove it. So you better start figuring it out, okay?
Inmates are figuring it out. They are now drafting lawsuits that cite magic words from Supreme Court decisions that just about guarantee a trial. The number of inmate suits grows as fast as the prison system's rapid expansion. The caseload is expected to double within a year, costing taxpayers millions more. Robert Riggs, Channel 8 News.
And on tomorrow night's Convicts Court, Robert reports how inmates have turned filing lawsuits into a prison pastime. One killer hopes to get the estate of his victim.
Working in the spirit of Texas, from WFAA-TV, this is the News 8 Update.
Because I broke the law, does this give them the right to break the law and take a man's life savings away?
A convicted killer sues to get part of the estate of the woman he murdered. Once again, our special investigation, Convicts Court, tops the update.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. Texas inmates harass the prison system and clog up federal courts with hundreds of lawsuits making outrageous claims. A new inmate case arrives at the Texas Attorney General's office every business hour of the day and costs taxpayers millions of dollars to defend. Channel 8's Robert Riggs tonight reports in his final segment of Convicts Court that inmates are now suing their victims.
You may never have heard of Texas inmate William Spaulding. Spaulding is a familiar name around courthouses, not for his crimes, but for his lawsuits.
All these periodicals I get.
The twice-convicted rapist keeps a mini law library in his cell at Amarillo's Clements prison.
And this here is all the related documents, letter I just received from the Special Master's office.
When the state took away Spaulding's favorite softball field for the site of a new prison, he sued.
I take the softball fields real personal.
Spaulding's suit might sound frivolous, but it jeopardizes a $141 million crash prison construction project designed to relieve crowded county jails. Construction continues on additions to 24 prisons while a court master investigates. Spaulding says the addition of a new 668-bed dormitory here would strain existing facilities in the neighboring 2,200-bed prison that holds him. Thus, Spaulding claims it violates the settlement that ended the 20-year-old Ruiz prison reform case.
You're looking at most probably 3 weeks to see a doctor and at least 3 hours to feed the entire unit. And I, for one, definitely don't want to be the last man to be fed after 3 hours.
The public doesn't have a lot of sympathy that you can't play softball now or that you've got to wait in line for food.
If you let these inmates sit around and brew, somewhere down the line you're going to have a lot of trouble. I know the public doesn't look at that and they don't really even want to hear this, but this is what prison life is all about. Because I've been on prisons where we didn't have recreation and everybody was gnawing at one another and there were a lot of fights generated.
Some of those inmates stir up a lot of trouble in the court system. They use $31,000 prison law libraries like this one at the Clements prison. It's annually updated at a cost of $8,000. What's not on the shelves, inmates can order on loan from the prison system's main law library. It's made available under Supreme Court rulings. Court settlements even dictate the brightness of lights and require cool air conditioning. Prison libraries are legal mills for hundreds of frivolous lawsuits. Most inmates claim poverty. They don't have to pay $125 filing fees and other court costs. Less than a day after his transfer to the Hughes prison, inmate Dan Thomas filed suit because 2 rolls of toilet paper per week were not enough. Thomas entered the prison system on a 4-year drug possession charge. He has picked up 39 more years for assaulting guards. Thomas has filed 133 lawsuits. 2 of his lawsuits complain that a loud TV in the day room disturbs his reading and sleeping. Thomas even filed a grievance because his Rice Krispies cereal did not go snap, crackle, pop.
I did read in the food service manual that we were supposed to get a 1-ounce service, and the boxes they had was less than an ounce.
So the box that you did get, did it have any snap, crackle, pop?
I assume it did.
Here's a sampling of lawsuits. One inmate sued because of air bubbles in his peanut butter. Another because he couldn't take showers longer than 10 minutes. One inmate claimed mental anguish caused by a burned-out light bulb. Another sued because he can't wear socks in the shower. One inmate is seeking $45,000 in damages because his pornographic magazines were confiscated. And another alleged malnourishment caused by a crumbling dessert. That case was dismissed by a judge who noted the inmate had gained 22 pounds.
They essentially are, I think, using every available technical opportunity that they have to gum up the works. And I think that crime victims and law enforcement officials who see these formal complaints about cold food and toilet paper not soft enough and such, I certainly can understand how they would feel that this is indeed a mockery, making a mockery of our criminal justice system.
The Texas Attorney General's office spends $5 million a year defending the state against inmates. 20 lawyers work on the lawsuits. A new case arrives every hour of the business day. Because of frivolous lawsuits, more than 150 Texas inmates have been sanctioned by the federal courts. They can't file any new civil actions without the prior written approval of the judge. Some of those inmates have been sanctioned as many as 5 times, yet they continue to file lawsuits. Inmates are now suing their victims. Twice convicted killer Fred Avenal now claims the woman he murdered was his common-law wife. He wants part of her estate.
Because I broke the law, does this give them the right to break the law and take a man's life savings away?
The lawsuit stunned Ken and Shauna Freeman, the son and daughter-in-law of the dead woman. They're fighting to keep Fred Avenal from getting his hands on their mother's small estate.
I mean, it's enough that a family should, God forbid, ever have to endure a member of your family being killed in any way, but to be cold-bloodedly killed the way that she was, and then for him to do this, it's unbelievable. It's just totally unbelievable.
Now Ken Coleman must spend his hard-earned money working in the West Texas oil fields to hire a lawyer to defend his late mother's estate. Meanwhile, Fred Avenal claims knee problems and doesn't have to work in prison. It means he can work full-time on his next legal move to get money from the estate of the woman he killed. Plenty of case law appears to be on the Texas law books to prevent a killer from benefiting from his crime. But it can be a complicated case because there was no will. Nevertheless, the victim's family, their estate attorney, and the bank that held the deceased woman's accounts must all hire lawyers to defend themselves. Chip?
Well, Robert, is there anything that can be done or is being done to stop the filing of these frivolous lawsuits?
The federal judges tell me that they used to be able to dismiss most of these cases if on the face of them they didn't appear to have the slightest chance of winning. Higher courts took that power away. They say they need it back from Congress. If they don't do something fast, by the end of the year, this rate of lawsuits is going to double. Every time a new maximum security prison comes online in Texas, it generates 300 new lawsuits a year.
Goodness. Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
There's a new development in our special investigation that aired last week called Convicts Court. Channel 8's Robert Riggs discovered there's no basis for a killer's lawsuit against his victim's family. Here's his update.
Earlier this week, we told you about the lawsuit filed by convicted killer Fred Avenal. Avenal filed a $15,000 suit against the estate of his murder victim. He claimed that 56-year-old Peggy Jones of San Angelo, who he fatally wounded with a shotgun, was his common-law wife. News 8 has now uncovered information that the basis of Ebenal's suit is fraudulent. According to a California woman, she remarried Ebenal on April 24, 1991 in Yucca Valley outside Palm Springs. Alice Ebenal later filed for divorce in Riverside, California. According to Superior Court records, the divorce was final on May 14, 1992. That's 4 months after Fred Ebenal murdered Peggy Jones, meaning that under Texas law, he can't claim she was his common-law wife. The victim's son and daughter-in-law never understood how their mother's killer could sue them.
And I still don't understand how he has the right, really.
We thought it was frivolous. When we got the papers, we just thought they were ridiculous and really didn't pay much attention to him except felt angry, you know, just kind of got mad that we'd get something that stupid.
Ebenal is serving a 48-year prison sentence. It's his second time behind bars on a murder conviction. In this prison law library, Ebenal and another inmate acting as their own attorneys drafted the lawsuit against the victim's family, their estate lawyer, and the bank that dispersed Jones' money to her estate. Ebenal claims he is indigent and files suit absolutely free.
Since you were convicted of killing her, how could you want or think you deserve the money?
Because I broke the law. Does this give them the right to break the law and take a man's life savings away?
Ken and Shauna Freeman must still hire an attorney to get the suit dismissed as frivolous. There's little the courts can do to punish an inmate for filing a fraudulent claim, especially when he's already behind bars for murder. Robert Riggs, Channel 8.